class we will focus on another application of short-term decisions, that is the production mix. In this case, we are talking about a company that realizes more than one product. So we have several products, and the main problem is to identify the order of the production and the quantity of each product that should be realized. So our problem is, given that we have a multiple production, so multiple products, which is the quantity of each of the product that we need to realize. So what's the best mix of production? Again, in order to deal with this problem, we can apply our reference formula of short-term decisions, revenue minus costs. Let's see in detail how we can apply this formula. When we deal with the production mix, our reference element is the contribution margin. So our contribution margin, if we think of the unitary contribution margin, is calculated as the difference between the unitary price minus the unitary variable cost. Let's see how we can deal with the production mix with a small example. Assuming that we have two different products, the product A, and then we have our product B. And we know that the contribution margin of our product A equals 10 euros. So every unit of our product A generates 10 euros of contribution margin. So it is the ability of product A to cover the variable costs. Now we have that the company realizes also the product B. So that in this case, the contribution margin of the product B equals 15 euros. If we look at this data, and if our problem is to define the order of production, we can say that for the company it is more convenient to realize the product B rather than the product A because the contribution margin is higher. So basically the ability of our product to cover variable cost is higher if we have the production B. But usually what happens in company is that we have some constraints, and this constraint is represented by the time. What happens is that it is very common that the company does not have enough time to realize all of the planned production. So we need to decide how many units of each of the products should be realized and which product should be prioritized. If we are dealing with this problem and if we have the constraint, we need to adjust this contribution margin formula. Assuming that we have the following constraint. We have that our constraint is represented in our example by the machine time. That is to say, we do not have enough machine hours in order to realize all of the production that is required by the market. Assuming that we have as machine time to realize the product A 2 hours per unit. So we need 2 hours of our machine to realize 1 unit, while we need 5 hours of the same machine in order to realize 1 unit of our product B. Given this data, we need to say, okay, again, which of the two products is more convenient and which is the order? In order to solve this problem, we calculate the contribution margin per scarce resource, which is defined as contribution margin per scarce resource, which is calculated as the contribution margin, which in this case is 10 euros, divided by our scarce resource, which is 2 hours. So we will have that the contribution margin of scarce resource to realize the product A equals to 5 euros per hour. This means that if we use our machine for 1 hour, the machine generates a contribution margin of 5 euros. If we do the same, if we calculate the contribution margin per scarce resource of our product B, we will have that the contribution margin of the scarce resource, which is the machine time, will be 15 euros divided by 5 hours for realizing 1 unit. So we will have 3 euros per hour. That is to say, if we use the machine for 1 hour in order to realize the product B, we will obtain a contribution margin of 3 euros. That's really important because in the moment in which we have a constraint, which is a scarce resource, in the moment we need to select the best production mix, we do not need to look at the contribution margin, but we need to take into account the contribution margin per scarce resource. That says the contribution margin that is generated by our product by considering the constraint given by the scarce resource. Basically, if we do not have the constraint, we would say it is more convenient to realize the product B. But if we take into account our constraint, which is represented by the machine time, we can say that it is more convenient for the company to realize the product A. And as I said, the idea of the contribution margin for the scarce resource represents the contribution margin generated by 1 hour of usage of the machine in order to realize each of our products. And basically, in the moment in which we have this constraint, the product that has the higher contribution margin per scarce resource represents the product that should be prioritized. Again, if we go back to our reference schema, we can say that in the moment in which we have decisions that deal with the production mix, the approach that we can use is the contribution margin per scarce resource, that is calculated as the ratio between the contribution margin of the unitary product that we are analyzing divided by the scarce resource of our unit. And we are going to select the order, which is the mix of our production, by selecting first the product that has the highest contribution margin per scarce resource, and then by selecting, let's say, the other products. And depending on each mix that we are going to select, of course, we will have different revenues. And by prioritizing the product with the highest contribution margin per scarce resource, we can have the highest net operating income among all of the possible production mix that we can have.